Welcome to Play by Players, an MLSPA podcast. This show is brought to you by the players and is all about the players, both past and present, who have plied their trade in MLS. You'll hear about each player's journey into the game, their careers and life after the game, on the field and off. It's all on the table. Now here's your host, former MLS player, Bobby Boswell.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Play by Players. Today we are joined by a 17-year MLS veteran. He's one of the few players to reach the 400 MLS appearances milestone. He has played over 33,000 minutes in MLS, or for you math nerds, that's 23 days straight of playing soccer. That puts him in the top 10 all time for minutes played. He's played for the Colorado Rapids, Toronto FC, and FC Dallas. He is a Supporter Shield winner, a two-time MLS Cup champion with two different teams. He's a three-time Canadian champion, an MLS All-Star, and a member of the U.S. men's national team. I like to say he's done more for wristbands than any other player in MLS history. Please welcome to the podcast, Drew Moor.
Oh, man. Is there time for me to say anything?
Yeah, well, the intros are long-winded, but in your case, that was cutting it down. I could have said, two-time college champion, world FIFA, youth world championship. So I kind of cut it down just to kind of fit it all in there.
I appreciate that. My face might be a little bit red right now.
Oh, well, thanks for coming on. Tell us how you feeling. We're going to get into your body over the course of this, but how you holding up?
Oh, I appreciate you guys having me. Very, very happy to be here. The body's holding up pretty well. Obviously, it's been through a little bit the last 17 years. I struggle to get through warm-ups these days on regen days. So it's a lot of mental strength these days. Obviously, I have a wonderful family at home with two little boys. I've got a dog. I've got a house. My boys go to school and stuff. So there's a lot to focus on off the field these days as a husband, as a father. But I still just get extremely excited and feel like a little kid every day when I'm driving up to training. And playing soccer still just does not get old to me. And it's something that I hope to continue beyond this season. That hasn't been decided yet, but
you still got gas in the tank. I can tell you got gas in the tank. And for those wondering, he's played. You're 1 year younger than me, and you're still playing. And I hurt myself the other day walking down the beach. So credit to you. I know what your body's been through, and the fact that you're still doing it is a testament to you. So let's rewind it back. I was born. A lot of people don't realize this because I claim Florida. I was born in Austin, Texas. You are a Dallas Texan. Talk to us a little bit about growing up in Dallas and how you got into the sport of soccer.
Yeah, Dallas was actually a great place. I feel like Texas in general, but North Texas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area was a great place to grow up playing soccer. Youth soccer, even still there produces a lot of good, solid professional soccer players. Clint Dempsey, Breck Shea, Kenny Cooper, Omar Gonzalez. It was a great soccer scene to grow up in, and it still is. My dad came from the Midwest, and so he didn't know a lot about soccer when I started playing at 5. He was my first coach ever, but it was just a sport that I fell in love with immediately. I grew up playing, basketball, baseball, golf, tennis, football, all the sports, but soccer was the one that I loved the most. That I woke up in the morning thinking about, and went to sleep at night thinking about. And so having the Dallas area and some of the players that I competed against and the club coach that I had, his name is Kevin Smith, an English guy who played in England growing up and stuff, was a huge part of my development, and being drafted there, obviously, to FC Dallas was great as well.
Yeah. And you bring up Kevin Smith, that was with the Solar Club, which is still there's still a ton of players playing soccer in the Dallas area, and it's actually become a hotbed for sending players to Europe, household names now. You bring up your family. You come from a big family. You have a family of yourself now. It seems like family is always a theme in anything we read or hear about you, which is very cool. And you brought up your dad, and that's kind of leads me perfectly into it sounds like he took you, and have gone to a ton of sporting events over your lifetime. A lot of them were soccer related, and I think it started as early as the World Cup in 1994. Is that right?
Yeah, man, it was unbelievable. So a funny story about that. I was 10 years old in 1994, and we knew the World Cup was coming, and the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas was going to host some games. Well, we got tickets to one of the first round games. I think it was like Germany and South Korea, and we were super excited to go. Well, my little brother was born on that day, right? And so we didn't get to go to the game. And so I immediately hated my little brother.
As you should.
Yeah, exactly. He's a great dude now. We're really close. But even still, then at 10 years old and without a professional league in the U.S. at that point, other than the A League, I think it was back then, and no professional team in Dallas, it was kind of like, oh, that sucks, but whatever. Well, my dad was in a soccer store a couple of days later, or maybe a couple of weeks later, and somebody offered him tickets to the quarterfinal game, Brazil against the Netherlands, right? Brazil against Holland. And he grabbed them. And so we got to go. And I remember walking up to the stadium, right? The Brazilian fans and the Dutch fans. And I was just like, what world are we in right now? This means so much to them. I remember Brazil scored a goal in the game, right? And a kid about my age, a Brazilian kid with the Brazil jersey on, was like crying, like tears of joy, And so it was just an incredible experience to have the World Cup in our backyard. And if I didn't already love soccer, that was the day that I thought I want to be involved in this the rest of my life.
Yeah, and that's awesome. You had hinted at there wasn't soccer currently. Obviously, that World Cup is a springboard for Major League Soccer, and then you get, you're fortunate enough to have the Dallas Burn in your hometown. And sometimes I read a lot of stuff. It's funny when a guy like I know you. I read a lot of stuff that I know is not true, so I'm always skeptical of saying it on a podcast. But I read somewhere that you actually went to like the first game for the Dallas Burn. Is that true?
It is, yeah. Back in, what was it, 96, right? Yeah. I was 12 years old. I knew, so obviously my club coach, Kevin Smith, was, well into the soccer scene in the Dallas area. Knew a couple guys that were going to be playing for the Dallas Burn, but my dad and I, as soon as we knew Dallas was getting a team, we wanted to go. And so I went to their first ever game. It was against the San Jose Clash, who had played in the inaugural game, I believe, the weekend before. Dallas didn't play that first weekend, and they hosted them in the Cotton Bowl. It was a game that finished 0-0, but they had the dribble up shootouts back in the day, and we were kind of regulars at Dallas Burn games, really kind of up until the point that I got drafted there about 8 years later.
Yeah, and you it's funny you bring up where the league was then and where it is now. And you bring up getting drafted. We're a little ahead of that. And I think the year that you got drafted was the first year they changed the name from the Burn to FC Dallas. But when you're watching those games, did you think, like, I went to Mutiny games when they had the team in '96, and I never thought like, oh, I'm going to play pro soccer. It was like just cool to watch Valderrama. And did you think watching at that level, at that young, were you just entertained, or did you think, man, I can actually do this one day?
I think I viewed it the same way you did. It was, certainly when I was young, 12, 13, 14, it was just cool to have another team to support. Obviously, Dallas is a great sports town. You have the Cowboys, the Dallas Mavericks, the Dallas Stars. And again, my dad was great about taking me to see these sports teams, and we became Dallas sports fans. And so to have the Dallas Burn was amazing. And then, I got into high school, and some of my high school buddies would go to the Dallas Burn games, but it was never, this is who I'm going to play for. I'm going to be drafted by the Dallas Burn, who ended up being FC Dallas. That never really crossed my mind. I think in high school, back when you and I were that age, it was kind of, where am I going to go to college to play soccer? Obviously the landscape has changed a bit with the growth of the league, but It wasn't until really I was in, in college that I thought I can play in Major League Soccer as well.
Yeah, and then before we get to high school, which I do want to talk about because you have just an obnoxious number of goals scored there. I read somewhere you went to the '98 World Cup too. Is that your dad took you over? So this is 4 years later. I think you're now 14. We both have a similar passion for Zidane. But I mean, what better way than to go watch him do his thing? So talk a little bit about how you go from becoming a soccer fan, playing it, watching World Cup. Now you're going into Europe to watch the World Cup. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so to kind of piggyback off of my '94 World Cup story, when we were driving home from the Brazil-Netherlands game, which finished 3-2 to Brazil, my dad was like, where's the next World Cup? We're going to the next World Cup, wherever it is. And that was literally on our drive home from this game, And so we found out it was going to be in France. I had never been overseas. I had never been in another country except for Mexico, I don't think. And so, yeah, we planned a trip 4 years early. 4 years in advance to go to the World Cup in 1998 in France. And it was incredible. We actually went to a couple games, but the main one we saw was the semifinals where Brazil played the Netherlands again. So it was like 4 years later, we see the same game, and it was in Marseille and it was unbelievable. And then we got to go to the other semifinal game where France beat Croatia. So I got to see, my childhood idol Zinedine Zidane play in a World Cup. Just an incredible memory. And again, one of the reasons why, my dad was a horrible soccer player. He played in the men's league for like a half a game because he tore his ACL in it. Right. He's a great athlete. He played other sports, but soccer just, he grew up in small town Indiana. It's just not what he grew up playing. But for him to, share the passion that I had for soccer and to take me to these World Cups, again, it's a huge reason why I'm still doing this after, professionally after 17 years.
Okay. Well, we talked a little bit, you mentioned high school there. So you went to the Episcopal School of Dallas. I always look up notable alums. You are 25% of the notable alums, and really, you should have made up 100% compared to who the other people are. No offense to them, but your mascot's the Eagles. Mm-hmm. But for me, the most obnoxious thing I found was you scored 32 goals in one season, which I was like, that can't be right. And I said, maybe that's for his whole career. And then it said, and a whopping 100 goals over a 4-year period, which I have to ask, was the competition just not very good, or was Drew Moor just like a goal scoring machine in Dallas, Texas?
It was the best high school level in the United States you will get. I graduated with 90 kids. It was a very small private school. And we played in a conference where 100 goals was possible. As somebody who played club soccer, basically, that's all I needed to, it was competitive. It was, obviously it was, again, it was North Texas. It was the Dallas area. There were some good athletes. I had a couple of very good soccer players that went to Episcopal as well, that I was able to kind of feed off of, but 100 even. I remember my last game, my senior year, we were knocked out of, the state tournament, and we're playing in the third or fifth place kind of consolation game. And I was on 99 and got my 100th goal and thought, okay, that's a decent high school career, but, the competition wasn't too high.
And were you, I'm assuming, an attacking midfielder at this point?
Yeah, I think my freshman year, I actually had a guy who had committed to UNC Chapel Hill as a senior. So he and I just kind of ran the show. So I scored a lot of goals my freshman year as a forward. And then when he graduated, I think my last 3 years, I was kind of an attacking midfielder and just was able to make things happen back then.
The least shocking accolade on this list is that you got high school soccer player of the year, scoring 32 goals in a season. So obviously between that and Solar, in the Solar, we joke around about high school not being great, but you make your name in the club level. talk to me a little bit about getting recruited. It is a hotbed, like you said. As a Floridian, we always struggled playing any teams from Texas, especially, north central Texas, where there's so many talented guys that, or quite frankly, there's really talented guys you never learned their name, but they were ballers, from the area. But, talk to me about how you got recruited and how'd you end up deciding to go to Furman?
Yeah. So being at Solar Soccer Club was huge for my development as well, because I had some very good club teammates. Two that were drafted into MLS. Kenny Cooper was one of my club teammates for my last 2 seasons. And then another guy, Kyle Brown, who was drafted right about the same time you and I were. He was drafted to Houston.
Yep. I played with Kyle.
Yeah. I played for a couple of years. Awesome guy. And we were always kind of at some of the big showcase tournaments, which was huge back in the day. You try to win your state cup to get to regionals. There were a couple of big showcase tournaments that were, invitationals to, some of the big club teams in the nation. And I was lucky to play for a team that I think sent everybody to play soccer in school. I don't think everybody finished, but, had some wonderful teammates. And Furman University was the top of my list. Going into my freshman year, Clint Dempsey was there. Ricardo Clark was there. They came to my house and said, we want you to be, the next guy that, that comes here and makes a name for himself. And I had a club teammate that was going to be going to Furman if I had committed there, and he was on the U17 national team, and a couple of his buddies were going to go. And so my freshman year there was a wonderful experience, and the place that I wanted to be my freshman year.
Yeah. And you mentioned Ricardo and Clint. You had a guy named Sergey Rod, who I grew up playing against in West Windsor. Yeah. Sergey was wild. So, West,
great player though.
Oh, and incredible. And then, you did have a great year. You were rookie of the year in the conference. You were on the, freshman team, and for the whole nation.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of hint at your dad being from Indiana. I mean, I'm kind of wondering what, when usually guys don't play, they transfer out. In your case, what led to you deciding to go, to a program that Jerry Yeagley had made into just a powerhouse?
Yeah. And Indiana was always a place that I wanted to go to. I went to their summer camp actually growing up in high school, but they didn't recruit me real hard. I think they wanted me there, but they certainly didn't show the love at the time that some other places were, like Furman. And knowing some of the guys that were at Furman, was a huge selling point for me. But a couple of things happened while I was at Furman. I just didn't ever feel completely comfortable there. I knew Clint Dempsey and Ricardo Clark were going to be turning pro probably that year, which they ended up doing. And I was just like, man, if I want to play professionally, I feel like I need to go someplace that is going to compete for a national championship. And while I feel like we did my freshman year at Furman, I thought transferring was just the best for me personally. It was a tough decision because I had made so many good friends at Furman and had such, great teammates and, had committed there. The coach did not want me to go. He made it very difficult for me, which I totally understand because I had just told him 12 months before I want to be there and this is where I want to go. And so, I think that was really my, kind of first tough decision to make as kind of a man, I guess you could say. But certainly glad I made it. But have some very fond memories from being at Furman as well.
Yeah, I'd say it worked out okay. And then the fun thing is a lot of times I go through a program and, Furman, for instance, we highlighted some of those guys. Walker Zimmerman was another guy that went there. And, when it comes to Indiana, like we don't have time on this podcast to go through the guys that came before you and even the guys that were there while you're there and the guys that came after you. But you join a team that has Danny O'Rourke, Jacob Peterson, Ned Grabavoy. I played with Big J Nolly, John Michael Hayden, just to name a few. You come in as a sophomore and, right away, you guys win a national championship. I think you got All-American your junior year, where you won another national championship. I say for you, this is like your real first taste of championships. Talk to me what it was like to transfer in, earn a starting spot, and then help lead this team to to really back to back. It's kind of unheard of. Maybe not in the old days, but it's definitely unheard of now.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience, and it was really my first kind of taste of a championship. In club soccer, you play in a bunch of tournaments that you win and stuff. But we never won regionals. We never went to nationals. We always thought that we had a team that could be able to do it. But then to go to Indiana and to put on this jersey where many national championships had been won before. And Jerry Yeagley was in his last year, my sophomore year, my first year there. And yeah, you look at guys like Daniel O'Rourke and Ned Grabavoy and Jay Nolly. All I had to do was kind of what I can do. I was just kind of a piece to the puzzle. I just had to go out and compete every single day and try to make myself better every single day and be a positive person. Because I think my junior year, the 11 guys that started in that national championship game, I think 9 of them got drafted, and a couple guys that were on the bench that day got drafted as well. And so it was almost like a professional environment. It really was. And we were taken care of probably better than I was my first couple of years in the league, when the league was still, the league was still pretty young and going through some changes and trying to, develop itself every single day. But being at Indiana was awesome for 2 seasons.
Yeah. And before, you kind of hinted at, getting drafted, but before, there were a couple milestones. Talk to me a little bit about the U20s, the World Youth Championship at United Arab Emirates. You guys had a very good American team. I had Justin Mapp on the podcast, and we kind of highlighted, Freddie Adu, Eddie Johnson, Clint, just the Bobby Convey, I think, was there. Just the names, Chad Marshall. It was just a really impressive group of guys. You guys made it to the quarterfinals. You start that game against Argentina. Just talk to me what it was like to, you talk about early on, you're watching these things on TV, and you're going to games and World Cups and watching them in person and blown away. And now you're essentially representing our country on the biggest stage at a junior level.
Yeah, I think going to the World Youth Championships, the U20 World Cup it's something that it just feels like such a long time ago,
Well, because it was.
Fair enough. When people ask me about great memories or biggest games or whatever, I sometimes that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, having gone and represented the U.S. in the United Arab Emirates, against. I think in our group we played Germany, was one of the teams we played, and then we lose to Argentina in the quarterfinals. I wasn't involved in the qualifying for that U20 team. I was kind of brought in late, and it was the first time I'd ever got junior national team, a taste of the junior national team, what it was like. I never represented the U17 level or anything, so it was an incredible experience. To play with some of those players, Freddie Adu, Bobby Convey, Clint Dempsey, who obviously I knew growing up and going to Furman, Chad Marshall, who I knew a little bit as well. Some guys that went on to have just incredible careers in both in Europe and MLS was awesome for me, and really got me ready for when I did eventually turn pro a little while later. But to go and represent the U.S. at a level like that, and to actually play in the majority of the minutes was very special.
Yeah, no, and you guys, like I said, I think that was one of the last times we had a group go and be that successful. So it was really impressive, and I kind of hinted at it before, where if it wasn't for a 94th minute, I think Mascherano scored the goal to tie it. You guys are through, and who knows what happens. But
do you know how they scored to win that one?
I don't, but I'd love to hear from you.
It was back in the golden goal days, right? It was a penalty kick.
And who
And
created that
I
penalty?
committed the
Who,
foul.
who created that penalty? Okay. Well, I don't bring that stuff up. We can edit that out. No big deal. No, and people have to understand that I always say, like, it's kind of funny. You were kind of downplaying that tournament, meaning, and for some guys, there's guys that that didn't go on to do the things that half those guys on the team did. So, I went to an alumni event recently at my college, and guys are talking about games and specific plays in college, and it's like, hey man, I played a lot more games after college. That meant a lot more. So I don't remember them, and they're just appalled that you can't. But it doesn't take away from the impact of what it was then. Just like I'm sure that isn't a great memory of how it ended, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you still, like you said, that was your first opportunity to represent the country, and it wouldn't be your last. Before we talk about signing with or deciding to skip your senior year, you also played for a very, very good PDL team in Chicago. And I think at the time they were called the Chicago Fire Reserves, and they became the Premier. And now I think they're like a whole different name. Who knows? But it was like one of the more impressive PDL teams. I remember I played PDL then, and I just remember hearing about this team that, like, not only did you not lose, you just didn't get any goals scored on you. And I know you were on some capacity a part of that team. How did that come about?
And Brad Guzan was our goalkeeper, actually.
Yeah, Brad Guzan. I think Chris Rolfe was on that team. Deshaun Robinson. You had some good MLS players, and they were young. But I mean, how did you get involved? Was it because of the proximity to Indiana?
Yeah, so it was between my sophomore and junior seasons, and there wasn't PDL teams in the Dallas area. And while I wanted to go home for the summer and spend some time with my family, it was like, there's a very good chance I'm going to turn pro after my junior season. I need to be playing regularly this summer to get ready for my junior season, and so a lot of the Indiana guys who live close to Indiana had played for the Chicago Fire Reserves for previous summers, and so it was just kind of natural for me to stay there for the summer and play with that team. And yeah, I was lucky again that it was, it had a lot of former Chicago soccer players who played club soccer for Chicago Soccer. Again, Ned Grabavoy, Daniel O'Rourke, Brad Guzan. And then, Chris Rolfe was a part of the team, Deshaun Robinson and a couple other guys who, maybe I don't remember all the names, or Jed Zahner, good guys that got drafted and had good careers. And so that was a wonderful place to spend my summer to get ready for my junior season.
Yeah. And, fascinating that team, it's funny, you hear how well they did, and then you hear who they had, and you're like, well, they should have done better.
Yeah, exactly. We should have.
but so you go into your senior year or your junior year, you were an All-American. Your junior year, you win back-to-back titles. At this point, you kind of do what I call the mic drop, and you just say, I'm out. Talk to me about that decision and, what was happening behind the scenes in terms of getting a Generation Adidas contract.
Mm-hmm. So I was really lucky. Our college coaches, right, which there was the transition from Jerry Yeagley his last season to Mike Freitag his first season, who had been there forever. He played there. He was Jerry Yeagley's assistant for the longest time. They asked me, because they're obviously well in touch with MLS coaches and agents and stuff, and they asked me before my junior season started, is going pro after this year something that you're interested in? And I said yes, absolutely, knowing that Generation Adidas was going to exist, that they were going to provide money to finish my education if I did decide to leave early, which was great. And I told them yes, I do plan on, if I'm deemed good enough to turn pro after my junior year. And at first they kind of looked at me like, what, really? But they were giving me a hard time. They had a lot of good players obviously come through IU. And so they were instrumental in helping me get an agent and make sure that, Generation Adidas was something that I'd be able to, to achieve, I guess. And so they were on board my entire junior season, which was a nice kind of, peace of mind, not having to worry about telling them that, hey, I don't plan on going here my senior
Okay.
year.
And then, as far as the Generation Adidas contract goes, as you hinted at, you get taken 6th overall in the first round by FC Dallas. This is back when, no offense to the draft nowadays, it was a little bit, I think there were more guys to find than there are now. You still have some diamonds in the rough. But back then it was a bigger deal. Talk to me about your first year in Dallas. Well, first of all, getting drafted there, were you excited to be going home, or were you like, oh man, I've already been to Dallas? Like, what's going on here? Talk to me a little bit about going home to play in front of the people you grew up playing with.
Yeah, I was super excited to go home. I'm a big homebody. Again, I've always been super close to my family. Being at school for 2.5 years away from Dallas, obviously I had a great time, and it was the right decision leaving home for school. But I miss home every day, especially with those Midwest winters. I'll tell you what. But I was super stoked to go home to play for the team that, again, I had been to their inaugural game. I had supported them in their early years. I was able to train with them some during the summers when I was at college, when I did come home. And so I was fairly familiar with a lot of the guys and the coach at the time, Colin Clark. So I was extremely excited to go home, and they were building this new stadium. It was going to be the second ever soccer specific stadium in the US. And so it was the right place for me to be. And it's, again, just another great step for me in my development.
Yeah. And those squads you played for in Dallas were pretty impressive. I mean, I think, we talk a lot about teams that maybe could have won more. I think you played in 2 Open Cup finals. You weren't able to win those, but really a heck of a squad with just really great individual talent. A lot of those guys went on to become great MLS players at other places, much like you did. Just talk to me about being a young guy, going into that locker room. Who really helped you and kind of influenced you as a young pro?
Yeah, we had some really good teams, man, and some really good players. We underperformed in the playoffs, unfortunately, which was kind of that. I feel like that team's downfall, why they're not really on the map like they could be. I mean, we had guys like Carlos Ruiz and Eddie Johnson and Greg Vanny and Oscar Pareja, Clarence Goodson, really good teams. And I had a couple of really, really good role models, Greg Vanny being one of them, somebody that I'm super close to still. Still one of the best dressed guys in the league, whether he was a player or now as a coach. Oscar Pareja was great with me. He was in his final season as a player, but just such a competitor, man. That if we were playing a small-sided game, you wanted to be on this guy's team because you would not lose. This guy would not lose in small-sided games. And then another guy is Bobby Ryan, who obviously passed away. It's been a little while now, but somebody who FC Dallas, everybody involved with FC Dallas always has a special place for Bobby Ryan in their hearts, because he was just such an amazing guy, such a great professional, and somebody who really took me under his wing and showed me how to work hard every day, showed me how to be a positive influence in the locker room, and somebody that I certainly miss every day, and feel truly fortunate and blessed to have had in our locker room to kind of bring me up, and some other guys like Clarence Goodson and just some really good characters and good people in that locker room.
Yeah, and for those that don't, you can follow Drew on Instagram and Twitter, and you can always see you do have a lot of stuff on there. Fans still put out Bobby Ryan stuff and anniversary stuff, so I can tell it means a lot to you, and you can see in the photos how much it means to you. So appreciate you sharing that. You start really having some success with Dallas. You get called into the full senior national team by Bob Bradley. Talk to me a little bit about going from playing in the, you didn't have a lot of love maybe as a youth, and you get that one tournament. Now you're representing the country on the biggest stage. That had to be quite an experience for you.
Yeah, it was incredible. And in fact, the first time he ever calls me in was for Copa America, which I didn't even realize at the time what Copa America means in South America. It's second only to the World Cup, you know. And it was because I was playing well with Dallas at the time. And the Gold Cup was right before Copa America, and the US was invited to Copa America, and Bob Bradley said we're going to play in both. And so I think, you know, he took a very strong squad to the Gold Cup. I wasn't involved in that group, but found out about halfway through Gold Cup that I was going to be called in for Copa America. And so, you know, to go to Venezuela with the full men's national team for the first time. Were you with us?
I was.
You were, yeah.
I flew into Chicago, and they put me up in a room. It was Carlos Bocanegra's room after he'd finished celebrating, so it was trashed, and that was the room I had to sit in while the rest of the guys got there so we could train that day. And it was kind of awkward. But yeah,
it was. I remember. Like, I get there, my first time ever with the full men's national team, right? And like, we go to a meal that the Gold Cup guys are still there, you know, and the Copa America guys are coming in and they're like partying and going crazy. And I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah. No, it did not go well down in Venezuela. But you know, we won't talk too much on that. You do get some experience down there. I played in I think just the Colombia game when we were already eliminated, but you know, I think you were a little more inoculated into the games there and playing right back. You also played in a U.S. Mexico game, right, here in Houston?
Yeah.
You know, talk a little bit, you know, the emotions that that go into that now every time you even watch the game.
Yeah, the U.S. Mexico game is, you know, when people say what are some of your fondest memories, what, you know, some of the biggest games, it was just a friendly, but it was, I mean, you couldn't hear yourself think. It was in Houston, Texas, right? In what used to be called Reliant Stadium. The roof was closed, and it was unbelievable. You know, you couldn't hear yourself think during warmups, much less the game. And I got to start, and it was just such a, you know, a roller coaster of emotions because I assisted Josie Altidore on his first ever international goal, which was awesome. But my man also kind of scored twice on set pieces as well, right? And so it was certainly a wonderful test, something that I always remember. You know, I wish the defensive side had gone a little bit better, but to be a part of it, to look back on you know, a memory like that and an occasion like that is something that again, I feel very fortunate, because a lot of people would have loved to have been in my shoes for that one.
Oh, for sure. So let's go back to MLS. Your 2009 season, you get traded to Colorado for Shellis Heineman. He had Ugo Himelu at SMU. I think, you know, he had to send some money and some draft picks for the trade for you. Talk to me a little bit. I mean, was that unexpected, or you were playing well? I mean, you were a staple in Dallas. You're still loved and revered there. The fans weren't real thrilled about that trade. How'd you feel about it?
It was 100% out of the blue. Literally walked in one Monday morning. I think we had the weekend off, we didn't have any games that weekend, and walked in and got a tap on the shoulder from our assistant coach, John Ellinger. Hey, coach wants to see you real quick. As I was walking out to training, I didn't think anything about it. You know, I thought Chellis wants to talk to me. You know, I go in there, he says, close the door. And I knew immediately. I was just thinking, where am I going? You know, there's only about 12 teams at the time back then, you know? And so he said, you know, we've just accepted a trade for you to Colorado. And I don't remember anything else he said. You know, he's obviously said a lot of nice things to me. But I walked out of his office and went straight to my car and called my dad and just started crying because it was unexpected. Obviously, I was still a little bit maybe naive to you know, the business that Major League Soccer and all sports can be. Although I had left for 2.5 years to go to college, it was like I was leaving home for the first time. I did live on my own in Dallas. I didn't live actually at home. But it was just, you know, I think it was just an eye opener. Like, wow, okay, I'm, you know, I'm a man now. It's time to go and start my life almost at 25 years old, and so within a couple months I fell in love with Denver and with Colorado, and couldn't have come into a better situation, and again super fortunate to to have everything work out as well as it did, as crushed as I was.
Yeah, so you go in, you play well. I always say that sometimes people believe that good things happen to good people, and what better thing could happen than playing the team that traded you in MLS Cup final, and helping that team win their first ever trophy. I mean, that I have to imagine. I think it's a 17-year where you won everything, but that has to be up there with like one of the best feelings of beating your old team a year after they kind of shipped you out.
Incredible. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, that I felt, I think a lot of people say, oh, it's a fair trade and all these things. I felt like Dallas just didn't want me anymore. We've got somebody better that we want, so we're going to send you out of here, and this was, again, the team that I loved, that I supported growing up, when, once the league formed and stuff. And so to be sent away, I kind of felt like, okay, well, you guys don't want me anymore. And so to play them, I didn't even want them to get to the final the next year. I didn't want to have to deal with the emotions and with people, interviewing me about it. Oh, this is your former team. This is the team that traded you away, and so to win that game, as ugly as it was pretty special to, win my first championship against the team that had traded me away just the year before.
And for those that don't know, that game was in the freezing cold in Toronto, which is kind of ironic considering, where we're going to go next. But, there are a couple interesting stats. I always thought of you, and, I was a guy that marked you on corners, or someone was responsible, one of the big guys, I'd say, for marking you. And you scored a lot of goals. You scored 28 MLS goals in your career, maybe more to come. Your goal scoring record, from a mathematical standpoint, it's pretty consistent everywhere you've been. I just feel like for some reason that Colorado team, you just scored a ton. It's talk to me a little bit about how you're able to find such success. Cause people, I'm bigger than you, not by a whole lot, but
you're considerably bigger than me.
you would get marked pretty well, but you find a way, I'd say like you and Dax are just deceptively awesome at finding the ball and scoring goals with your head. Do you feel like that's an added element to your game that a lot of guys, in that same position just don't have?
I don't know what it is. It's just, first of all, I go forward for every corner kick and every free kick, and so I get plenty of opportunities. I feel like I should have twice as many goals as I do. I've hit some crossbars, I've hit some posts, I've had some called offsides, stuff like that. Good goalkeeper saves, but I don't know. A lot of guys, they say the same thing. It's just like I've got a magnet on my head for the ball, and I try to make good runs. I try to know where the corner kick taker is going to try to put the ball. And I did score 100 goals in high school, and so I think,
hey, that's a good reference to bring back. So another great stat, which I just couldn't believe, was you've never gotten a red card. And I know you're not superstitious, but I am, so I'm going to knock on some wood here. You've gotten a lot of yellow cards. Well, not a lot compared to me, but compared to some people, but the fact that you've never gotten a red card tells me two things. One, that you play the game the right way, and two, that VAR wasn't around for most of your career.
Yeah, thank goodness.
That's a joke for me.
I do have a couple red cards. I don't know if they're just not on there. I have one regular season and one playoff red card.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, sometimes I get it wrong. Well, it's shocking to me, in that you've played, anytime someone's played 400 games, and forgive me for getting that wrong, but
no worries.
Even at one red card in the regular season, one in the playoffs, that's pretty incredible. And it says that, like I said, you are playing the game the right way. And was the red card for a tackle, last man? Do you remember what? I mean, obviously, hopefully, you remember what they were, since you only had two of them.
The playoff one was mouthing off to Baldomero Toledo. when we were already well beaten by Houston Dynamo.
Okay.
I actually wasn't suspended until the opening game of the following season, because that was our last game that year.
Okay, well that might be why I couldn't find that one. What about the regular season?
Yeah, the regular season one was it was when I was with Dallas. Maybe my last season with Dallas. It was a bad tackle against Tony Beltran. Actually, I think we had just conceded to go down 4-2 late in the game, and he kind of took a loose touch, and I was like, I'm going 100%. I'm either winning the ball or
the leather
out. Yeah, and I felt horrible. He didn't get injured or anything, but it was a fair straight red card. I walked straight off the field and texted him later on that night to make sure he was okay.
That's nice. I never did that. You had a couple other milestones, or big one in Colorado in the 2011 season. You set the record for most consecutive games played at 68. Ironically, it wasn't an injury that got you; it was yellow cards that we kind of hinted at. But I think you played. You broke the record and played one more game. Nowadays, I think that's unheard of because of workload management. And guys I don't expect anyone to do anything close to that, maybe a goalie, but even then, probably not with the way the schedules are loaded now. That's got to be pretty cool to do that.
Yeah, I think it's something that, again, I look back on and I'm very proud of it. People say, oh, you play professional soccer, you only train for 2 hours a day and then you're done. It's like, yeah, that's true, but you got to take care of your body. You got to get sleep. You got to eat right. I always tell my wife, oh, I work 24/7, and she's like, no, you don't. And I'm like, no, I do, And so, I was fortunate to be able to play in several different positions, especially during that run. Have coaches and teammates that have a lot of faith in me and stuff, and to play in, I think it was 69 consecutive 90-minute games. Thinking about that now, it makes me want to go take a nap or at least lay down, but back then it was doable and something that I'm proud of.
Yeah. And the other big milestone for me there was 2015. I think in 14, you actually, against us in DC, I think you tore your ACL, sliding on a Luis Silva goal. You recover, you have a good year in 15, and Pablo names you to the AllStar team. That I know there's a video online where you get pretty emotional, but that's got to be a pretty good confirmation of so far a great career at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I tore my ACL at 30, and it was because Luis Silva absolutely chalked me and sent me out of the camera, the screen, but yeah, I knew right away. I literally heard my ACL pop, and so tough recovery, man. ACL is no joke, and to have gone through it and to be able to share my experiences with guys who, go through it now. I like to, to let guys know what to do, what to look to, to look forward to, how to rehab it and stuff like that. But then to be named an all-star team, it was obviously here at home in Colorado. And so, to have Pablo name me a part of that all-star game, the first time I'd ever been a part of it was, I got a little bit emotional. It was also a little bit of a surprise that they sprung on me, but to have, just done my ACL maybe 10, 11 months before that, and to now represent the all-stars against Tottenham was awesome.
Well, just so you know, I had a lot of winning seasons where my coach was the all-star coach and they didn't take me. It's like, hey, who got you there? But I figured they didn't want to pay me my bonus. So, good on Pablo for doing the right thing there. You end up signing, you always can say, you're old when you qualify for the early free agency in MLS, but you end up, you have a lot of people that are after you. I think I thought you were going to go to Philly, but you end up going to Toronto. And I feel like that was a decision because of what was going on there in terms of, you had a real chance to win some more hardware. But did you feel like you had this kind of chip, like, hey, I'm coming off an injury and I'm not an old guy, I can do this? What went into making the decision to go up north?
Yeah, it was a big decision for me. It was the first time free agency existed in Major League Soccer. I didn't want to leave Colorado. I didn't want to leave the Rapids. Again, my wife and I, we loved it here. She was about 5 months pregnant at the time, and we had a nice thing going here, But I thought I'm 32 years old. I've won a championship here. Toronto wants me in free agency. They seem to have a lot of very good pieces. I knew Greg Vanney well, who was the coach at the time, and I thought, let me go play for a kind of a big market club that will be different than kind of anything I'd done so far in my, I think at that point, 12-year career, and made the decision. And yeah, for Philadelphia, I was very close to signing with the Union as well, but Toronto just seemed to have a little bit more of what I was looking for. And I still felt like I had 3 or 4 more good years in me that I could play, regularly day in and day out. And, what better place than place with guys like Sebastian Giovinco and Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley and a good coach in Greg Vanney.
Yeah, and those were some great teams. Y'all won a lot of hardware. We hinted earlier at the 2017, had to probably be one of your favorite as a professional. You won the treble, and that you won the Supporter Shield. I think that was your first and only Supporter Shield. You won your second MLS Cup, which there aren't a lot of guys that have won 2 in general, but especially not 2 with different teams, which is pretty notable. And then you had 3 Canadian championships while you're up there, it's always good to celebrate with your guys. So really special teams. The interesting thing, you hinted at your ACL and kind of how you talk to guys. Now you had some, I know you had a heart issue for a little bit there, which I think ended up not being as big of an issue as maybe originally. I think you had a quad, you tore your quad. I know you had some calf issues. As a guy who's getting older, and I've got some crazy stats, like you played 27 games in 4 different seasons for Dallas. You played 30 plus games in 4 consecutive seasons for Colorado. And those other 10 years or 9-10 years there, you played 20 or more games in 5 of those seasons as a pro. And people they think when you become this Iron Man that your body can't break down, and you start thinking it too. So when it does, you're like, oh crap, this isn't it. But you talk a lot about living this stuff 24/7, and really it does come down to body maintenance. And you got a guy like Robin Fraser now who talks about how great of a professional you are, and how have you learned to adapt to this changing league and still be relevant?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. You realize you're not invincible. You're not Iron Man. The quad tear, I think, was kind of the beginning of me realizing that the body is hopefully slowly kind of starting to break down. It just, you get to a point you just cannot sustain day in and day out what we put our bodies through in Major League Soccer. And so while I still, when I'm healthy and knock on wood, I have been for a little while now, when I'm healthy, I make sure I go up there every single day and still train as hard as I possibly can and do everything I can to get my body right, to get my mind right, and to help the team. But there's also this role that I feel responsible to fill in being a presence, being somebody who's seen a lot of things, who's been around for a long time, who has had some success, who's had some failures, that can teach some of these younger kids and even some of the older guys, through example and through being a voice and just, again, showing up every day and doing what I've always done. It looks a lot different than it did when I was 22 years old. But I do still think there's a role for guys who might not be able to play every game for 90 minutes, but can come on and, make appearances when needed, or to close things down, late in games, but to also just be a positive influence in the locker room and on the training field on a daily basis. And that's certainly a role that I've tried to embrace these past couple seasons, and hope that there's a season or a couple more seasons in front of me to continue to do it.
Yeah, and kind of to piggyback on that, so one of my favorite things that I've heard you say, and I hear it a lot, right? You hear a lot of guys say they sacrifice so much being a professional athlete for their family, and you're one of the few guys who you say it much better, and I think guys mean it this way, but it doesn't come out that way. As you say, you thank your family for sacrificing so much to let you be a pro athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it's about is, there's a lot of people behind the scenes, like you said, it's 24/7. It's hey, honey, there's a game tomorrow. I can't wake up with my kids. I'm going to be gone for preseason for 3 months, or I'm going to leave in a blizzard because we're not going to be able to train, and you're going to be here. So I really love that you have this outlook where, as a guy that doesn't get to do it anymore, it is an opportunity and something that people would kill for around the world. So I love that you look at it as it's not a sacrifice for you, it's a sacrifice for everyone else around you so that you can do it. But let's talk a little bit about, I know Toronto, I kind of downplayed your impact there in terms of not just on the field, but I know you were a bit of a fan favorite and it has a special place in your heart. I think both of your sons were born there. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're dual citizens.
There you go. That's just a great story. But it really is, when you consider kind of where you end up going back, it's, Colorado is the biggest chapter in your soccer book right now. And you kind of go back at a really funky time, right before the world shuts down for COVID. Talk to me a little bit about your coaching stint during the pandemic.
Oh man. So yeah, it was funny because, well, also not funny, but it was kind of funny because
it could be funny.
It was last kind of September, when, the league had kind of survived COVID and we were back to playing games. We were traveling charter, which is amazing when you've flown commercial for 15 plus years, right?
Middle seats. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's nothing wrong with commercial, but I prefer charter. And you're flying out the day of games sometimes, right? So it's just everything's weird. And then all of a sudden we start getting an outbreak on our team where, a couple staff members test positive and then a couple players test positive. And it's like, man, this isn't great. And Robin Frazier, our head coach, calls me one night, kind of randomly. I wasn't really expecting a call from him, but I'm just like, hey, Robin, how's it going? And he's like, well, it's been better. And it didn't quite register at first with me. I'm like, oh, did more players test positive or something? He's like, no, a couple coaches did. And he goes, how do you feel about coaching the game in Portland this weekend? And I was like, wow. Of course, immediately I was like, of course, I'll do whatever you need me to do, Well, it turns out, we continued to get more and more positives and we didn't end up going to Portland because we basically had to shut down for like 2 weeks. But, for a couple of days there, I was myself and the academy director, and then, Jack Price, our captain, we're kind of coaching the team, obviously, just taking out the game plan that the coaches, I Zoomed with them, each evening before, before the training session, so I could, know what we were trying to do and stuff. But yeah, a little different, something I hadn't experienced yet, but it was again.
And how'd the guys handle that? I mean, do you feel like there was buy-in from your teammates, or?
They were laughing at me the whole time. Not one of them did what I asked them to do.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was saying I don't think I would have gotten that call if it makes you feel better. But it kind of does hint at, I'm not a believer in, I'm a big believer in preparing for what the next steps are, and you can still prepare for the next steps and still play 3 more years, So for me, that kind of hinted at, a lot of people are asking you, do you want to be a coach? And I know you did social media work, and some media stuff, some TV stuff. When you were injured, what can people expect from Drew Moor down the line in terms of, do you have an urge to do that? Or are you still leaving that door wide open and while you're focused on playing?
I certainly have thought about it. It's something I think about every day. What am I going to do when I'm done as a player? I've been thinking about it for probably 12 years now. I am taking the the B license coaching course right now as we speak. It's all virtual right now, although there is an in-person meeting. Coaching is something that intrigues me. I don't know yet if it's something that I really want to do. Broadcasting and commentating still very much intrigues me. I was able to be the color commentator of a couple games when I was injured with my knee. I mean, obviously this was, 7+ years ago. Front office work even intrigues me a little bit as well, but it's, I definitely do not plan on leaving the sport. I don't really plan on leaving the league necessarily. There were days, I would say, earlier in my career where, soccer became a bit of a grind, and it was like, when I'm done, I just want to go do something completely different. But I just feel like it's something that will always pull me back. I've been doing it. It's been my passion since I was 5 years old. And so staying in the game in some capacity is definitely my plan, but I would say coaching, broadcasting are right at the top of my list.
Well, hear me out here. Let's just say you had coached that game in Portland as a player coach. You actually would not have been the first player in MLS. I think Roy Wegerle for the Colorado Rapids, ironically, coached one game as a player coach back in '96. Shout out to the Wegerle family. I grew up playing for his brother, Steve Wegerle, as a youth. But there has never been an announcer coach. So maybe you could find a way to be the head coach and announce your own games, and say, we're going to go down to the field, and you just yell at a guy and sub him out. But all kidding aside, I'm sure whatever you decide, it's going to be great. I know you're going to keep playing because you're still carrying that torch for guys like me that wish they were doing it. Their body didn't hold up and their talent level wasn't as good as yours. The last thing I want to say is a mixed martial arts coach that I really like, John Kavanaugh. He has a motto that I stole when I played, and for you, it's more fitting for you, I think, than it is for me. And he always told his fighters their best ability was availability. And for an Iron Man like you, it seemed like you were always available for your team whenever they needed you. I think that you're still available, and you should continue to still be available. So I want to thank you for being available for this interview. And I know that there's a lot of people that are going to be really excited to hear, what you had to say because of your illustrious career. And I can't thank you enough for coming on today.
I appreciate it, Bobby. Thanks for having me, man. You're somebody who I've respected since we came into the league together. And, my days as a player are numbered, obviously. And so if I can continue when I'm done to be as happy and as bright and as funny as you, then I'll consider myself a pretty lucky guy.
All right. Well, there you go. There's top guy, more minutes than any human body should endure, and he's still going. So, I'm thinking 3 more years. I want to thank you for coming on. That's Drew Moor, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Play by Players. Visit playbyplayerspod.com for more episodes or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
This has been a production of the MLSPA. Learn more at mlsplayers.org.